The idea on the left that Trump voters are racist garbage isn't dead yet, but it is on life support. Hello, good people. It is Todd Shannon, data scientist, social commentator, getter of buckets, and I hope you had a fantastic Christmas. But today, we have to talk about how the hating of the Trump voter is waning, right? The people who are, mostly people who are left-leaning, who are starting to see that the idea that people are motivated to vote for Donald Trump because they are racist and misogynistic and xenophobic and every phobic you can think about. To sum it up in the words of Joe Biden, that the Trump voter is garbage. This idea is waning, and this is a good thing. But at the end of this, I'm going to show you the fact that it's by some morons, David French, are still trying to hold on to the idea that it's a good idea to attack the Trump voter, because really their whole mode of influence, or the reason why they're relevant, is because they are Trump deranged. And quite frankly, if you hold some of that stock, you need to sell it because it's just doesn't have the value that it used to have. But I want to take you through a couple of things that I think are really important to understand. Let's take a look at Anna Kasparian. Anna Kasparian is a fantastic example of a real transformation, because Anna Kasparian was a person who really thought that the Trump voter was garbage, the Trump voter was racist, the Trump voter was this, that, and the other. And then she started to realize, after having a very, very important experience where she was assaulted by a homeless person. And let's take a moment to look at that.
The fear, and then the humiliation, and weirdly shame. Like, I felt ashamed for some reason. And it was awful. And it was really taking a toll on my mental health, because I have to walk my dog, right? So at least 2 or 3 times a day, I'm going outside kind of scared. And so I opened up about this on the show, not really thinking much of it. And before I know it, I'm starting to get these messages, and it's like really, really harsh stuff. And it's about how you are painting a picture of the homeless community. You know, how could you be like this? You know, these are your unhoused neighbors and they need help. A few people accused me of being racist when I had never disclosed the race of the individuals who did this to me. And in fact, they were white. And so, like, when they started accusing me of being racist, I'm like, wait a minute. Why are you assuming that the people who did this?
Of course.
Yeah, like, I think you might have a problem here.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that woke me up. That woke me up, because I'm like, oh my God.
They eat their own, mama.
Some of the people.
They eat their own on the extreme left.
And some of the people that I've associated myself, because I thought these are the good people.
Yep.
These are the ones who don't treat others differently based on their skin colors. No, they definitely have stereotypes in their head, and are totally blind to the fact that they have those stereotypes, and in fact go around accusing others of being bad actors when they themselves need to do the work.
So you see that here. So what she's describing is she decided to disclose that she was SA'd, assaulted by a homeless person in California where she lives, and that she shared about that. And then there's always the light bulb moment that comes on for these people. They say a lot of times that people who end up being conservative are often leftists who were mugged by reality. And in this case, that's almost quite literally the case with Anna Kasparian. But this just became the beginning of her transformation. And so she gives another interview with Glenn Beck, where she talks very candidly about how she started to change her mind about the Trump voter. So this is where the first case is where she starts to change her mind about her own political side. She thought these people were loving and compassionate until they turned on her. But now she's starting to see something different about the Trump voter themselves.
These I love watching streams of city council meetings because that's how you understand what's really going on in these cities, right? These are real people who live there and they get their opportunity to speak.
Chicago's been an amazing thing to watch.
Wild.
Yeah.
I mean, I watch every city council meeting from Chicago because it's
crazy.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And for me, rather than relying on mainstream media reporting or anyone's reporting, to be quite honest with you, what I'll do is I'll go out of my way and I'll watch, the entirety of a government function, local government function. I talk to real people and I get a sense of where hearts and minds really are. And so on election night, I wasn't surprised at all. I knew what was coming. I totally knew what was coming. I knew that Cook County was going to swing, I think it's about 8 percentage points toward Republicans. I knew LA County, and this is what I was surprised about. I did not expect Donald Trump to flip 10 counties in California from blue to red. But I guess I shouldn't have been surprised about that either. Because when you look at the conditions that people are living in a Democrat-controlled state, well, yeah, you can understand why people are turning their backs on the Democratic Party.
So you see that. She starts to see, it's like, wait a second. These people's lives are actually being negatively impacted by the Democrats and by leftist policies and ideology. And maybe they're not garbage. Maybe they're not racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, all of the phobics. I can't even say it right. But you get the point. She starts to change her mind. And this is not just Anna Kasparian. There's kind of a trend of this sort of transformation. Here's quickly Van Jones echoing a similar sentiment.
Men are hurting, man. Men are hurting. And the feminist culture tells you, don't cry because you're the problem anyway. And the masculinist culture tells you, don't cry because boys don't cry. So you just aren't able to talk about how scared you are you can't provide for anybody. You can't talk about how scared you are that you don't understand your kids and what's going to happen to them. You can't talk about anything. So at least Donald Trump lets you have an emotion besides shame. And so, guys, we can sit up here all day long and do this talking point gumbo stuff that we do. But I'm telling you right now, you guys are going to be in trouble next. Because until somebody fixes these problems for real people, there is a rebellion in this country. And anybody who comes out and sounds like they aren't pulling their talking points out of Cracker Jack box will get a hearing.
So Van Jones here saying, at least Trump lets you feel something besides shame. And so there again, he's starting to see that the Trump voter might actually be motivated by something genuine. Surprise, surprise. What a revelation. Yeah, it's what we've been saying the whole time. And finally, the capstone for this is one Stephen A. Smith. And I'm going somewhere with this. I want to give you a bunch of examples because this is really important to understand. There are real shifts in this, and it is by mostly people on the left. Let's listen to Stephen A.
Problematic, but I wouldn't confine it to the world of sports. I think that the Democratic Party have been very adroit and skilled up until recently in really coming across as if they have this high moral ground to stand on and essentially guilting people into believing whatever it is that they're singing about. And I think that ship has sailed now. I think that with these latest election results, the American people have spoken. There's no way around that. When you consider the fact that Donald Trump won all the swing states, that he basically elevated his cachet in every demographic that you can find. He won the popular vote as well as the electoral college vote. It was an indictment against the Democratic Party. They went too far left. They ignored the common sense, middle of the road, sensible voter as far as I'm concerned. I don't believe that most of American citizens are on the fringes, whether it's extreme right or left. I think most of us, whether it's center right or center left, want to be in a position to compromise. We want to see people communicating with one another, getting along with one another and expressing their levels of disagreements. In other words, disagreeing without being disagreeable per se. And we didn't see that. And as a result, when you engage in demagoguery and fear mongering, and that's your battle cry in order for you to receive votes, the American people said enough of that nonsense.
The American people said enough of that nonsense. Well said, Stephen A. Well said. I might even give Stephen A. a round of applause for that. But here's the thing. Despite the fact that there has been a clear and obvious shift towards really understanding that it's not malevolence or evil or cruelty that motivates people to vote for Donald Trump, there is one holdout. There are a few holdouts, I should say, but one in particular is a guy by the name of David French. Now, David French, how should I put this? David French is one of the most pathetic creatures that I have ever seen. I don't think David French is just, I don't think he's just wrong. I think he's a snake. I think he's a bad actor. And this article that he's written is as of December 22nd. So this is just a few days ago. He released this article, and the title of the article, I want you to hear this now. This is so pathetic. Why are so many Christians so cruel? Hold on, let me find my Russell Westbrook, man.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
What in the heck is David French talking about? Well, in order to understand this, you have to understand that David French basically only is relevant because he is the most aggressive, one of the most aggressive Trump deranged people in the media. He writes for the New York Times. He coins himself as a conservative, and he's on his moral high horse about how Christians need to not be so, consumed with power and winning and blah, blah, blah. This guy, I feel like he drinks just pure estrogen. This guy's cojones have been completely cut off. He is a person that I thoroughly, thoroughly do not respect. And there are very few people that I have absolutely zero respect for. But David French is one of them. He's got to be right at the top. And so David French writes this article about Christians being cruel. And just please understand what this is. This is basically David French and his fake Christian way of attacking the Trump voter. Because it is the evangelical church, the evangelical Christian, who is basically the foundation and one of the strongest, most basically impervious to leftist ideology group there is. And that's why Donald Trump has had a lot of his success. So let's look at this pathetic article. This is a question that David French starts asking. He says, here's a question I hear everywhere I go, including from fellow Christians. Why are so many Christians so cruel? Now, let me just stop right there and just explain that only a person who surrounds themselves with a bunch of Trump deranged loony bins would ever hear that question. I've been in the faith almost 30 years. I'm 46 years old. I got saved when I was 17. I have never, ever, ever heard anyone ask that question. So this tells you the sort of people that David French surrounds himself with. Let's continue. I can't tell you the number of times I've heard someone say something like, I've experienced blowback in the secular world, but nothing prepared me for the church hate. Christian believers can be especially angry and even sometimes vicious. Really, David French? Really? You see, this is why I spent so much time telling you about Anna Kasparian's story. Because, see, Anna Kasparian and the woman she was talking to, Jillian Michaels, basically has experienced the same thing. If you cross the left in any way, they will tear you to shreds. And Anna Kasparian, if you know anything about her, I won't say you can't be, at least not now. But the former version of Anna Kasparian was completely unhinged, completely Trump deranged, so far to the left that even she thinks that the current Democrat Party is not far left enough. And Anna Kasparian said, let me tell you something. The moment I told someone that I was assaulted, they started accusing me of being racist, and I didn't even say what the race of this homeless person that assaulted me on the street was. And it opened her eyes. She experienced firsthand the cruelty and the viciousness of anyone who goes against left-wing orthodoxy. And here you have David French with his low-life and completely unethical attacks on Christians, saying there's nothing like church hatred, assuming that church hatred was even a real thing to be addressed. The idea that it's worse than what people in other social circles experience is pathetic. But maybe David French should talk to a few detransitioners, a person who was quote unquote transgender, and then they decided that they had made a mistake. Talk to those people about the sort of attacks and hatred they receive. Let's continue. It's a simple question with a complicated answer, but the answer often begins with a particularly seductive temptation, one common to people of all faiths, that the faithful, those who possess eternal truth, are entitled to rule. Under this construct, might makes right, and right deserves might. Most of us have sound enough moral instincts to reject the notion that might makes right. Power alone is not a sufficient marker of righteousness. We may watch people bow to power out of fear or awe, but yielding to power isn't the same thing as acknowledging that it is legitimate or that it is just. The idea that the right deserves might is different and may even be more destructive. It appeals to our ambition through our virtue, which is what makes it especially treacherous. It masks its darkness. It begins with the idea that if you believe your ideas are just and right, then it's a problem for everyone if you're not in charge. In that context, your own will to power is sanctified. It's evidence not so much of your own ambition, but of your love for the community. What you want what's best for your neighbors. And what's best for your neighbors is, well, you. Now, I have to tell you that this is completely delicious, because this is copium to the 10,000th power, right? This is David French trying to come to grips with the fact that he lost. He lost. They lost. The whole reason why he basically sold all of his credibility to be this Trump deranged nut job writing for the New York Times, and that they only employed his services because they thought that he had some inroads with the evangelical church, and that people on the evangelical right would listen to him in his Trump deranged nonsense. And what the American people showed on November the 5th of this year is that people like David French are irrelevant. And now he's trying to sell you some idea that the fact that, you won, that's some sort of dark will to power because you think might makes right. Can somebody give David French a big cup of shut the heck up? Somebody give that guy a 20-ounce glass of go sit down and have several seats. Nobody cares what David French and people like him think. And it's absolutely beautiful. I am glad that people like David French are being rejected. And now I have to imagine that David French is in a panic. So I won't read you the rest of that nonsense article, because I imagine that your gag reflex, even if it's not very sensitive, I might be bringing you to the cusp of that gag reflex, because I have a difficult time reading through that garbage. But just know that David French hasn't figured out that attacking the voter is not a good strategy. Maybe he should start to think from the evangelical standpoint. What Anna Kasparian and Van Jones and Stephen A. Smith, and these are people who don't even, from my understanding, claim to be Christian. Maybe Stephen A. Smith might claim some sort of faux Christianity, and I got some talk about Stephen A. here in a bit. But the bottom line is this. Nobody cares what these people think anymore. People like David French, but even the people on the left are starting to wake up. And I'm so glad that people like David French are completely irrelevant, and that the people in the church have ignored him. This is a beautiful thing. But let me know what your thoughts are. Are you selling your stock in the Trump hate? Are you a person who used to be completely Trump deranged and now You have been cured of your derangement. You've got a tall, tasty glass of reality. Maybe you were mugged by reality like Anna Kasparian, and now you see the error of your ways. Let me know in the comments. And if you're new to this channel, I appreciate you stopping by and sticking with me this long. Please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, my friends, God bless you.